Okay, at 6:02, and we will open this Historic Review Board work session on April 23rd. What's this, the day the Blazers win the series?
Yes.
What time does the game start?
7:30, so you have,
Okay, so you're in,
Yeah.
you guys,
we're all gonna be
Move
John
on.
tonight, saying we're getting done at 7:30.
No eating, no nothing.
well, we do,
No,
I do
I'm
have
just-
food. So as far as the work session goes, sorry, I'm wondering why we're not showing on the screen. If we can, there we are. We can end the work session around 6:40 or 6:45, if possible, and then there's time to eat before the regular meeting starts at 7. Okay.
So you look like you're preparing to go through the report on the survey?
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Okay, I'm happy to let you.
Great. So we did receive one additional comment over email 2 days ago. So I will just pass that out. You take one and pass. And
Did you do that too?
and I'll try to include this email comment in as we go through each item so that you don't have to try and read it, remember it. Okay, so we've been doing the HRP policy updates for quite a while now, and we are finished, mostly finished with, gathering input from the community. Of course, we always are open to more, but we held an open house. We visited McLaughlin neighborhood, Kanema neighborhood. We advertised in the Trail News, on social media, on the city website. And after the open house, we also posted a survey with questions online. So we had 25 to 30 people at the open house, and then we got 20 online responses to the survey, or 20 total responses to the survey, people from the open house and then people online. And then we also had the boards up, posters at the meetings and posted at the library for about a month. And we have little stickers on those, and so we got input that way. I think, there are 568 historic properties in Oregon City, and we sent a postcard out to all of those to advertise the open house. And, we didn't hear from a whole lot of people, and I'm guessing that means we're mostly, people mostly agree with the policies and don't have a big issue with them, otherwise we would have heard from them. So I think that's one takeaway from this process. And then I'm going to go through each of the topic areas, summarize what we heard from the community and from the board as well, because we held several work sessions on this topic. And then I'm going to also include my staff recommendation for each of those topics. And my recommendation is based on the public input that we received, the input from the board, and then also guidance from the Secretary of Interior, and then other jurisdictions as well. What I'm hoping to get from you at this work session is some general head nods and direction from you so that I can take this and go back and actually write the language of the policy and so bring to the next meeting the actual new policy that you can vote on. And I would write it based on, what we agreed to tonight. So really, the only thing that would be left to do is wordsmithing, if needed, at the next meeting. This does go, then we get input from Planning Commission and City Commission. It's not an ordinance or legislative action, but our code in chapter 1740 requires that we update the policies that we get that the planning commission and city commission also review it. So that would happen in June and July, before it actually gets adopted. So if they have, if there are any issues that come up during those reviews, then they might send it back down to us, to rework something. Okay, so fiber cement, siding, well, first I'll let you look at this nice picture of our open house, yay. And then we'll get into the first topic, fiber cement siding. What we heard from folks, about half people said, yeah, let it happen in any case. I support fiber cement, on historic properties. About 40% said, well, only in some cases, maybe not on the front of a building, or maybe not on the historic structure, but on the back or on an accessory building. And then 2 people, or 12%, said never in any case allow fiber cement siding. The additional comments that we received, got a little bit into some details about, the thickness of the siding and the design of beaded lap or Dutch lap. So we could decide to get more detailed. But my recommendation, is to allow smooth only fiber cement siding, not the wood grain textured look, but smooth fiber cement siding on accessory buildings, both new and existing, and on non-contributing structures in Kenema. Ken, you can just, if you guys wanna jump in as I go, or you can kind of wait till the end of each topic, I'm happy to go either way.
Well, I think that comments on each section probably will make it clearer if we
Okay.
just go through it that way.
2, allow the smooth horizontal boards only, and then shakes, because there's fiber cement like rectangles, you know, big pieces, and so we want to clarify that this is horizontal boards to
Board,
replicate
right.
wood siding, or shakes or shingles that use straight lines and not the jagged kind of
Oh,
design.
like the sawtooth?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 3, also allow fiber cement when replacing vinyl siding on any structure, even if it's historic. So if we had a historic building, 20 years ago, get vinyl siding, and now people want to replace it, allow fiber cement in that case.
It's an upgrade.
And then 4,
siding, yeah.
Fiber cement on historic structures should require board approval. So I would not be able to approve it as staff. If they want to use it, they have to come to you. And your decision would be based on how well the substitute material matches the original wood siding in profile and design. And I think that's where we would get into thickness and the style, like the beaded lap, Dutch lap kind of thing, conversation. And so that implies that you might be willing to allow fiber cement on historic structures. If you don't want to imply that, because you probably would say no, then I would suggest we scrap that last number 4.
I'm inclined to leave number 4 in there. It's a decision that we would make on a case-by-case basis. And again, that is only in replacing vinyl siding, if I understand it correctly.
Well,
Even that would come back to us though, right?
vinyl, what's not maybe totally clear here is that number 3 would be allowed at a staff level.
Okay,
And
Oh,
and so
okay, I see.
if you have wood siding and say it's rotting or something, and you want to put new siding on and use fiber cement, that's the case by case that would come to you in number 4.
okay.
Oh, okay, God, this thing feels like it's echoing.
It's loud.
I don't know if it's me or I feel like I'm,
You can turn the room volume down.
anyway,
It's too loud.
Huh?
Oh, go ahead.
anyway, I was wondering if they're just replacing, certain areas, how does it compare? I have not had exposure, to that. How does it compare to wood? So when you're replacing the whole house, it's one thing because you have nothing to compare it with. But if you're repairing and only, replacing a certain section of it, how does it
I
compare?
really doubt that it would work.
That's where my, question is how is it really compatible? Or can you tell that this has been replaced and this is original? That would be my, question.
I don't know of a fiber cement product that attempts to precisely replicate the natural wood product. And in fact, I think that where dimensions are involved, the new products are metric.
Ooh,
So it'd be really hard to make a match. But I can't imagine anyone actually wanting to do that.
Yeah,
So you're thinking.
well,
that
and it would come
this is-
before us anyway, so we would
yeah.
have that say, that would be my concern.
Yeah, I can't imagine somebody patching in,
Well, sometimes like the siding along the bottom, where it's been exposed, for splash and stuff like that. Sometimes, like we did that when we did the Ainsworth House of Cottage, the bottom, along the bottom, we did, we replaced instead of with actual, siding. But,
if you were unable to actually match the original wood, then you'd
And
have
dimensions.
to do it as a reveal of some sort.
Yeah.
I think.
when we had stuff milled, but that was a way back, so. All right, that would, but I guess we would cross that bridge and address that when it comes before us. But you might, if somebody does apply and has that question, you might,
You can
broach
tell
it to
them what
them.
a torturous process it is to come in here and get
Yeah, we
a
would
hearing
encourage
here.
repair
and it's a
or
lot-
using wood,
Yeah,
right?
it's a lot easier
Yeah.
to go the direct route
So,
and use.
Anyway, that would be my
Okay.
only concern.
So is anything less than all sides of designated historic structure still require approval, or are we, or that go to staff?
Which one?
Number 4, because you're talking about like patching or repairing,
Yeah,
but number 4 states, on all sides of designated historic will come to,
Maybe the better word is any, so that just saying.
so
if you
any
pro-
instead of
if you're-
all.
If you're
Yeah.
proposing to use fiber cement on any side
Yeah.
of a
okay,
historic
yeah,
structure.
so that might be a good way to address that.
And yeah, like I said, this isn't the exact language that would be used in the policies, but I just
Right.
wanna clear
And-
this with
and
you
like-
first.
Yeah.
And he said that, or Ken said, I can't see that somebody would replace it with something that was different dimensions. But you need to, I think we need to address that to make sure.
Okay. So any concerns with this as written?
Nope.
Great.
Not for me. Change
Um,
all to any,
We have a question.
yes.
If I have a helpful comment to make, would that be possible?
Can you come up and speak so the camera can?
You're on County
And the
camera.
microphone.
Thank you.
My name is Trent Premor, I'm an architect emeritus, and we used to have a house in Eagle Creek that was built in 1926, and behind that was an old house that was built probably in the 1880s or so. And I redid the siding on that, and it was old channel siding. What I did there, because I wanted, some of it was rotted, is I salvaged the good pieces, put a wainscot around it, and then kept the upper part. So there's
Oh, so
different
there's a
ways of doing it.
divide.
Right,
Right,
right.
huh,
And on the cement boards siding, we usually call it bevel siding, though it's not beveled, but it's,
or drop lap, or.
yeah. And when you talk about dimension, it's how they install it on how much is exposed.
Right,
So, and it's a material you have to be careful with, because since it's cement board, when you plow a nail through it, it breaks out the back side, and if you get water through it, it creates rot in the back.
yeah,
So they've come up with some new systems of installing it to prevent that, and those need to be taken into account too. But anyway,
Good.
Okay.
Interesting.
Today, of course, you would have to bring your question about wainscoting the bottom of an 1880 structure to us for approval before you would do that.
right.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to porches and decks. Similar survey results where we heard about half of people said allow composite materials on porches and decks all the time, whenever, in any situation. 42% said only in some situations, for something that's not visible from the street, for example. And then 2 people or 11% said never allow composite deck materials. We also, we discussed this at the board level and kind of talked about not allowing it on the front, but maybe behind in a place that's less visible. So my recommendation is to allow composite decking on side or rear decks or rear porches, including the railings, stairs, and deck boards. Also detached deck structures that are behind or to the side of a house could do that as well. So for a corner, when I say side, I mean interior side and not corner side. So it wouldn't be along the street, unless it's behind the house. But we can kind of talk about whether that's okay or not. Second recommendation, the composite material color should match the house. That's usually what we say now for any porches or decking, is that it needs to be painted. And so, most people will, maybe paint the wood white in many cases, but it could also be a different color that matches the paint scheme of the house. There are, the composite products do come in like a white color. And then there are various shades of wood, and then there are different tints. So the color issue is an interesting one. It would limit, requiring the color to match would be a little bit limiting for folks, and they wouldn't be able to use the wood grain look, for example. Number 3, use of composite decking material on front porches or corner sides of the property would require board approval. Number 4, for railings, require vertical balusters rather than any horizontal type of design, with a top and a bottom rail with the baluster attachment between the rails and not attached from the outside. Aluminum railings, a lot of the products come with, you can get everything composite, or you can get the composite decking with aluminum railings. And so this would require, or this would not allow aluminum railings at a staff level. Number 5, clarify that no pressure treated wood may be visible. So this policy would apply to any porches and decks, not just composite. So if someone's building a wood deck, I want the policies, as staff, I would like to have that in the policies so that's really clear to people. Because that's what I'm saying to people constantly is no pressure treated wood, no pressure treated wood. Wrap it, or use it underneath where it's not visible. Number 6, clarify that wood decks and porches must be painted to match the house. Paint stain is also acceptable. That's a lot. Any thoughts?
Number 5, it's clarified that no pressure wood may be visible. I just, instead of may, shall
Okay.
not be visible or something,
Yeah. Yep, we can do that.
the may kind of leaves it in limbo.
Okay.
When you talk about aluminum railings in the 4th paragraph, you were speaking of a specific product application. But is this a general statement about metal railings as well? You get an anodized aluminum railing, it's not gonna look that much different from a steel railing until you put your hands on it.
Yeah, we might need some. So you're saying, you know, if somebody has a deck and they have a steel railing or on the
Yeah,
front porch
would
or
a, would a
cast
steel
iron?
railing pass the test?
There,
You're gonna ban aluminum outright, I'm
Well-
not opposed to that. But-
so I'm thinking of, if somebody's doing like concrete stairs or something on the back of a structure with a metal handrail,
Mhm.
that typically meets the Secretary of Interior standards. And that's covered under, I think it's HRB policy number 8, which allows alterations that meet the Secretary of Interior standards.
Uh-huh,
So I wouldn't want this to preclude that.
I see.
And I can work on wordsmithing it to achieve that.
Yeah, and in that application, they probably wouldn't be using aluminum
Right,
for structural reasons, so.
right.
Okay, I understand, I can buy that.
And then you're saying the color should match, because sometimes they just like stain it, so down in your last, it says paint stain is also acceptable, would be the same. Can you, I don't know, with the composite material, can you stain that, or does it have to be, it has to be painted?
No, you don't,
No,
typically you
it's,
don't,
you
it comes
buy
in
it.
different colors.
Colors, right,
Yeah.
right, okay.
So I don't think it's meant to be painted or stained, and so the number 6 applies to wood. Decks and porches need to match the house, with paint or paint stain. And then number 2 is for the composite
Composite, oh,
material.
okay. Is that like hardy plank, is that a
No,
type
it would
of,
be,
I'm just not
hardy
familiar.
plank is the siding.
Have you heard of the
The-
Trex?
Trex, okay, so it's, okay,
Did
Thank
we
you.
specify a difference between composite decking and like vinyl decking?
We can. I think this whole conversation, we were, I think we were talking about the composite and not the fully plastic.
Right.
Yeah.
Certainly the railing, I've seen some pretty terrible vinyl railing
Mm.
stuff.
Oh,
Seen
yeah.
this- I mean, it's glossy plastic.
Mhm.
I don't think we wanna include that in.
should we include that as vinyl decking and stuff shall not be
Yeah.
allowed, you know, similar to the aluminum railings?
Yeah, we can, clarify that vinyl or fully plastic materials aren't included in this.
Yeah. And then that way it leaves no question,
Yeah,
you know.
that's a good point, thanks.
Cool.
Any other concerns with this one?
Not me,
Nope.
okay.
All right, moving on to windows. So we asked about 3 different types of windows, fiberglass clad wood, all fiberglass, and wood plastic blend. Fiberglass clad wood, the vast majority of people said, allow this in some or all cases. But for the all fiberglass and the wood plastic blend windows, it was more evenly split between allow it or don't ever allow it. So, and then also, people who were supportive of the alternative materials in general just said it's acceptable if it matches, the look of the original wood window. And so my recommendation, is to, of course, keep our policy language that encourages window repair over replacement. Allow non-vinyl alternative window materials, so all 3 of those fiberglass blend or fiberglass clad on accessory structures, new or existing, and on non-contributing structures in Kenema. And number 3, if the structure was originally built with aluminum or vinyl windows, so for example, like a 70s era apartment building in Kanema, then allow vinyl replacements.
It would be non-contributing anyway.
It would, but we would be allowing vinyl in that case.
Okay.
In addition to, of course, fiberglass, you know, or the other alternatives. Number 4, allow wood, aluminum clad wood and fiberglass clad wood windows on designated historic structures if they match the original window design. A different window type may be used, so a lot of times you can use a casement in place of a double hung, or a single hung in place of a double hung, a casement in place of a picture window, as long as the appearance is the same. And I'm including the muntins, the grids, specifically because if it's a 6/1 window, for example, like in the picture that's shown, we want to match that. And then it's the owner's responsibility to document the design of the original windows. Number 5, never allow interior window grids. Number 6, add language encouraging replacement windows to match dimensions of the original windows for stiles, rails, and sill depth. And so we would include in the policy some sort of diagram like this one, and just have some educational language about trying to match as close as possible these dimensions, knowing that it's impossible to exactly match the original wood window unless you get a fully custom build most of the time. And so the products that are out there, like the fiberglass clad or aluminum clad wood windows that are out there, even the wood windows that are out there, don't exactly match historic, you know, design. But we do allow, you know, wood windows now, even if the exact design doesn't match, right? So it's really difficult to get into matching the precise measurements, and it's also difficult to enforce. And so we would just instead add this kind of educational language, encouraging people and sharing information, so that folks can go out and try their best to match those dimensions. And then we would be able to approve, or you know, they would be able to replace those windows without board approval. So this is expanding the policy quite a bit from what it is currently. So I'm kind of looking for your direction on this one.
Do you think we should address FiberX?
That is the wood plastic blend.
Yes.
You know, the additional testimony that you attached, it says Brett Kemp's windows. Is this his information that he submitted, or, I mean, that Francesca submitted?
Yes.
This isn't in her words.
I think it is her translation of her conversation with Kemp.
Okay. Because this was interesting, and I know wood nowadays is not
Right.
like wood of old. So this was interesting, but I wasn't sure. I thought it was him until I saw her name down below. So this is her interpretation and not his actual.
That's my understanding, is that she talked with him and then she took notes and then typed them up for us.
Okay. Because it was, you know, very salient. Okay.
So I see what the survey said about the FiberX, but I don't see it addressed in the staff recommendations. It's just ignored.
So the number 2, the non-vinyl alternative window materials,
Okay.
are all 3 of those. So the Fibrex, the fiberglass, and the fiberglass clad wood.
Okay. Okay.
But they would all,
If you can make it clear to anyone over the counter, as clear as you just made it, then I'm happy with.
Right, yeah, we'd have to work on the
Easily
language.
pleased.
And so these recommendations to me, does this mean that it'll be approved at the staff level or
Yes.
does it come to the board?
This all would be approved at the staff level, so if somebody could replace their original wood windows with wood, aluminum clad wood, or fiberglass clad wood. So the current policy says, window repair is encouraged. If you have to replace your windows, you must use wood and it has to be in kind. It says in kind, materials. And so that's a little vague as far as design goes. But it does only allow, well, if it's a wood window, you have to replace with wood. If it's there's a problem with the current policy. If it's a vinyl window, you have to replace with vinyl. If it's an aluminum window, you have to replace with aluminum because the policy says in-kind materials. So we want to kind of clean that up and add clarity, but what this would allow is I'm replacing my wood windows with fiberglass clad wood at a staff level.
Okay.
I'm happy with that.
As long as, yeah,
Well, and some things we have talked about is maybe specifying kind of a level of quality by giving some product examples, like the Milgard, is it Milgard Essence or Marvin Integrity, and kind of putting a floor on the quality. We can do that. It does get a little tricky when we start talking about brand names and stuff in a policy, so that's why I've avoided it, but we could go there if you want to go there.
well, and I noticed on several of the comments, with the windows, that as far as the, energy efficiency, but, so on National Register buildings, that wouldn't be allowed, or?
No, and we can specify that not on National Register properties.
Because I would think that would affect its,
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think as generally, I think staff, if any alterations to a National Register listed property are requested, we typically take it to the board
Sure.
no matter what.
oh, okay,
That's
not
just
SHPO?
it's not written
Okay,
in any policy, but that's in practice what we do. But I think it's helpful to clarify just in case somebody doesn't know and
right.
then they don't feel like they have the permission to go and do this.
So it's not actually for National Register listed properties, it doesn't, oh, no, yeah. They should come
Yeah,
before, okay, but you said it's not, in the,
well, if there's a like for
regulations.
like replacement of windows in a National Register
Right.
property, that might not have to come to the board.
But if they're wanting to
generally,
use
if they're doing
alternative
anything that's different from exactly what they have now,
replacement,
then we take it to the board.
okay.
Are we good now?
Sorry.
We are.
Okay,
Solar.
solar.
I just wanted to make sure.
So what we heard is, we actually heard a lot of strong opinions that solar should be allowed outright with no restrictions on historic properties. And then we heard an equal number of people say, yes, allow it, but only in some cases, not on the front of a building, not in a prominent location. And then we had 2 people or 11% say never allow it. on this historic structure, I think one of those said, it's okay if it's detached. So my recommendation is to, allow solar, number one, location on secondary facades and on accessory structures. If they're panels, they need to be low profile, installed flat, that don't alter the slope of the roof. They need to be compatible in color, so, you know, dark gray roof or black roof with black panels. You know, if you have a really light color roof, then that would have to come to the board. Flat roof structures, and these are the policies, these are straight from that, document that we had reviewed previously, from, I think it might have been the National
National
Trust. That had recommended solar policies. So, flat roof structures set back from the edge to minimize visibility, pitch and elevation adjusted to reduce visibility from the right of way. Solar shingles, I think this is, I heard some hesitation, from folks about solar shingles because they're new and we don't really know what they look like, yet. And so, the most comfortable we could get was allowing them on the secondary facades if they match the roof color, but nothing more than that. Anything more than that would have to come to the board. And then freestanding arrays, in locations that minimize visibility from the public right-of-way, or are screened from the right-of-way with fencing or vegetation. So the application that came before you a few months ago for the panels facing the street and visible from the right-of-way in the backyard because it was a corner lot, that would still come to the board under this policy.
Okay.
But this would allow some people to not have to come to the board.
I'm not, I guess, again, not familiar with the shingles. I guess I should have looked on, do they look like shingles?
They do.
They do.
They look really good.
Yeah.
I don't think they're very common yet, though. They're very, very new.
Right.
Huh. That's kind of cool if they, you know, if they don't stick out,
Yeah.
but,
Maybe just a little shinier than
Yeah,
composite
I mean,
They
roofing.
look more like
Oh.
slate tiles or something than like asphalt shingles.
oh, okay. I love the one, that said that, oh, never mind, I can't find it, but it's something about, you know, taking care of the earth, cause your design in your house isn't gonna be worth it if the earth's not there, something to that effect.
True enough.
Yep. Oh, here, preserving the planet is number one of importance because we can't preserve our houses if we don't have a planet. Yeah.
Any concerns with these?
I have none.
Okay. Fences and walls are favorite. We didn't hear from anybody regarding height, so I'm recommending to keep that the way it is. As far as 3.5 in the front, this corner side, and then 6 feet in the back or the interior side. We did hear from McLaughlin, from some folks that we should apply the fence policy throughout McLaughlin, not just for designated structures. That is, you know, something that we can talk about in the future, but this process is not a code change. That would require an actual code change to chapter 1740. So it's not really within the scope of our project, but it's something to keep in mind for any future code changes. So we had some images of fence types, and we asked folks, do you think this should be permitted outright in the front yard, in the rear yard, on commercial properties, or never? And then kind of circle which ones. You can circle more than one, right, if you think it's appropriate in all cases. So here are the results. And I'm just gonna we can go back and look at those if we need to, but I'm just gonna go into the recommendation. So we would add the definitions of each of those fence types and photo examples to our policy as a nice guide for for property owners. We would add a narrative and purpose statement that emphasizes open designs in the front yard, and I think at one point you saw a draft paragraph of that. And I'm just gonna use, I think what you saw before, that kind of talks about why we have a policy on fences to begin with, and generally what we're looking for as far as compatibility goes. So we would add the following, the staff recommendation is to add the following to the front yard list. This would be for front yards and corner side yards. Adding basalt stone, I think right now it just says combinations of iron and masonry. So we just wanna be super clear to people, basalt stone is absolutely permitted outright. Cast in place concrete. Split rail fences for non-contributing properties in Kenema only. And the split rail, I feel like it's the fourth one down. Quite a few people said front yard and rear yard, it would be okay. But we did have some comments, some separate comments from the survey question that said that split rail is not appropriate. And so the recommendation is just only for non-contributing properties in Kenema. Goat fence for non-contributing properties in Kenema, that's that welded wire that's framed by wood. So the split rail and goat fence are interesting because they are open designs. You know, you can see through them, and so in a front yard, they would accomplish the same thing, kind of that a picket fence accomplishes, but because of the design of them, I think we heard that it's really not as compatible, and so people weren't comfortable with allowing those on historic for designated or contributing structures. Solid wood board, so unspaced picket, when it does not obscure the view of the home. So for example, if the house is built a little bit higher on the lot and the fence is around the perimeter, or when used on a non-contributing property in Kenema only. So this would require the property owner to kind of demonstrate to staff that the 3.5 foot or shorter fence would not obscure the view of the home. Right now, we only allow picket fences, and this would allow wood without spacing between the pickets. Adding steel or aluminum rail fences for commercial properties or for non-residential, so that would be churches, schools, and commercial properties. So number.
You say
go ahead.
non-single family, so for duplex, triplex,
We can, that's a good point, maybe it should be non-residential.
that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, number 3, add the following to the list for fences and walls that are acceptable in the rear or side yard. Wood lattice, poured concrete, split rail, recycled concrete, goat fence, non-basalt stone, and gabion wall. And then add the following to the not acceptable list, just to be super clear. Well, chain link is already on there, but chain link hedge slats and then chicken wire.
Oh, I know what you mean, but the hedge, yeah, where they, okay, gotcha. Because chain link is already on there, right?
Right. Any comments about these?
So
Curious about the discussion that got Gabion Wall put on
approved,
the list.
yeah.
In the backyard. Well, I think there wasn't a whole lot of discussion on it, but based on the survey results, it seemed like it was
Yeah.
supported as a rear yard or commercial property. I mean, there were a handful of people that said never. So, you know, the current policy doesn't address gabion walls at all.
So split rail fences are allowed in McLaughlin neighborhood?
They are not, I think right now, split rail is in the on the never allowed list.
Okay. So this is just saying that it would just be for non-contributing in Kenema,
In the front, and then it would be allowed in anybody's backyard.
huh?
I
I
don't-
would think it would detract
That's what I was gonna
From
say, is that it,
Kenema.
to me,
the
absent of
neighborhood.
any evidence, historic evidence of it in Kenema, it creates a false sense of history, sort of, in that is a rustic type that you would see in certain types of
But not in the
historic
town.
districts that have more of an agricultural background or something maybe, but not so much in Kenema.
Yes,
Even though there is one down there, fairly recent construction, last 3 or 4 years,
Well,
on and on.
but that doesn't make it right.
yeah, I mean, not approved. I am not considering that, but for,
Sure.
We discussed this quite a bit in the M&A Advisory Committee meeting, last one we had, so we
Does he need to say his name?
discuss some of these things. I think one thing that I'm a little lost on here, is there a difference between a retaining wall and a fence? Because there are retaining walls around, and how is that looked upon as far as this fence? I mean,
Yeah,
does the fence start above the retaining wall?
oh, so in
It's a
situations
retaining
where you
wall.
have a retaining wall and then a fence on
Right.
top of it.
So retaining wall has a purpose of holding back a
Mhm.
bank.
Yeah, so this policy
So-
is meant to include, fences and retaining walls and landscape walls.
So it probably needs to be clarified that retaining walls are what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that we talked about a lot was, there are no, as far as I know, there aren't permit requirements for fences.
That's
that right?
correct.
Unless it's over 6 feet, is that right?
Right.
And so
Or three
how are
and
you
a
gonna
half in the
control
front.
it? Yeah, how are you gonna?
Right, yeah.
So there's gotta be a way of controlling that, because it's bad policy to control it after it's built. Because a lot of
Right.
people they're pulling all their savings out to build this fence around their house, and suddenly being told they gotta tear it down, that's a real hardship.
Yeah.
So the question's gonna be too, if you not only presenting these regulations, how are you gonna get that to the
Regulated.
public so they understand it?
Yeah, we expect people to, when they own a historic property, we do send a packet to them that has historic property information and a copy of the policies. So we get the information from the tax assessor every quarter. And if there are sales or properties and it's a new owner, then we send out that packet. And we try to do a lot of education, but we hope that people know that they're in the historic overlay, that they need to call and check, and a lot of people do. And frankly, a lot of the other policies as well, on siding, for example, you don't need to necessarily get a permit to replace your siding either. So a lot of that's why we kind of have policies, at a
Or
staff
painting your
level.
house,
I'm sorry?
and painting your house, you were talking about painting decks.
Right, so, I mean,
a
you
really
hit the nail on the
difficult
head, you hit the nail on the head of why this is challenging, but, I think the best we can do is be very, very clear in our policy what's allowed and what's not allowed, so that people can just look it up and then, get their fence built or do whatever work they're doing. And then we don't have a permit process for it.
And when you were talking about windows, just to backtrack, when you talk about replacement windows, it's common in the industry that when you talk about replacement windows, you're talking about replacement sashes. And not necessarily the frame.
Right.
So there might be a need to clarify which one you're doing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so when we're talking about fences and walls, we're mainly talking about the finish or the surface appearance of it. I understand how those go together. So. We're pushing the clock here.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
on,
Jeez.
This is the last thing. So if there are
Okay.
if there's no additional, feedback from the board, then, you know, I can go back and craft the language to reflect all these things that you just gave direction
I
on.
have,
That
Oh,
does
Thank
work.
you.
I guess the only thing I have problem with is the split rail.
Denise handed you one too.
Oh, I'm sorry. Denise.
Oh, I guess
You were
we're
just
not
looking
gonna
the
get
other
our,
way.
shoot, we're supposed to be.
Stealth mode.
What we're gonna do is allow these, but don't expect us to come right back in at 7:00, because we're not gonna be leaving till 7:00. So
Yeah,
come on
because we were
forward,
supposed to
Denise.
leave already, so, okay.
Please don't leave. Stay. Anyway, Denise McGriff, Oregon City, and I apologize for being late, but I was at the William L. Holmes House taking care of some stuff for the Rose Farm Management Committee. But I have been following this and been talking to Kelly off and on about some ideas and proposals. And what I have a concern about is we had a request about a year ago from a member of the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association to propose to the HRB that the fence policies be applied equally among all the properties. And Kelly and I have talked about that, and I've communicated back with that person and said, you know, if you feel that strongly about it, you need to come and speak for yourself. And that person did come to the work session in April, and I don't know what the resolution was, but what I get concerned about is I would agree with Claire, split rail fencing is not appropriate, I think, in either of the historic districts, either in Kenema or in McLaughlin, because it is not a fence that would have been typically been utilized in this particular area. If you live out in Springwater or you're in Viola, yes, that probably would have been more appropriate on those types of larger properties. But we're talking about inner city properties,
what
at
we
least
were saying.
in Oregon City. And I think that I would like to strongly recommend that you apply fencing unilaterally through the Kenema district. It is a National Register district. Obviously, Ken lives there. He knows about that. And to have this sort of mishmash of you can do this if you're non-contributing or you're not. You know, basically, you've got a district that is trying to be cohesive and be looked at as a whole. And I think everybody should have the same policy. I had sent Kelly some comments about stuff that I thought would be acceptable in the rear yard, and I have to tell you that everything from B down to me is not acceptable in the rear yard. I agree, chicken wire and chain link hedges or slats or any of that, and I don't know where you're going with the people that buy the plastic fencing. That to me probably is even a little more heinous than some of the other things, but I'd like to see fencing proposed that whether you're a contributing structure or a non-contributing structure would look equally good on either property. And, you know, goat fencing, I don't think it belongs in a historic district. Kelly did ask me to go look at a property that has a solid wood fence with unspaced picket. And I took a long and deep breath and I said, well, you know, historically, it probably wouldn't have been there, but it does look okay. And, you know, I would grit my teeth, and I told her that it'd probably be all right, but I don't particularly want to see that continue in other parts of the McLaughlin. This house is in the McLaughlin district, in other parts of the McLaughlin district, because it really is not, it's the exception, it's not the rule. So that's really all I have to say, and I will continue to communicate through, you know, with Kelly about some suggestions. I've done extensive research on fencing when I was here at the city, and I'm telling you, I've got more stuff at home in my archives than I even want to talk about. And I've been going through and trying to find some of that, but books are out there.
Mike
Thank you.
Mitchell, I'm an Oregon City resident, and I was just trying to watch out for things that I was confused by because they're likely to be points of concern or contention later on. First, on the porches and deck color, the recommendation said to match the house color. Does that mean the house body color or the house trim color, or either, or do you care? But if you care, I think that needs to be spelled out. On solar, I was a bit concerned because it talks about in point number 4, I think, no, 2, it said to match the roof slope, but then there were different requirements for flat roof. And my question was, does that mean you could have an angled panel on a flat roof as long as you did those couple of visibility things that it talked about? So I don't know if that needs to be cleared up or not. And the third thing, on the rear yard list that's right here, do you need to specify that those can't be used if the rear yard faces on another street?
Like on a corner.
Corner
Like a-
Well, not a corner or a lot that
Goes all the way
that goes all the way
through.
through from street to street. Because I think the intention is that it's not visible from the street, but if there's a street back there also, it would be from that street, so, anyway, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So
Direction.
we have the, direction for staff. We have the survey regarding, what people thought was acceptable or not acceptable. And, I think that's the best and broadest input from the public that we have. And your recommendations are based on those numbers, and I'm personally satisfied to stick with that. Regarding the solar panel question, I do understand the issue, and maybe you could come up with some wording to clarify
I can.
that. I think that's a good point. And regarding the color on the composite decking, I was assuming the whole time you were talking that we were talking about matching a color.
A
not
color.
necessarily the dominant
color,
color.
right.
And maybe that, a couple of more words added to that could take care of that. So go ahead, Grant.
I was just going to say that I think good comments. There are a few minor tweaks to the solar windows, decking, all that, but I think really close. I feel like we maybe need to revisit the fencing. I think that the survey on the fencing provides good input, but not necessarily well-educated input in all cases about, particularly the split rail issue and things.
And even the goat,
I tend to agree with most of what Denise said about, and what if you have a contributing structure and a non-contributing structure that are adjacent, and the owner of the non-contributing structure puts up the fence between the two? Do they get to apply their rules or and
yeah.
I think that maybe we do need to just create guidelines that apply to the whole neighborhood as a
I
cohesive
agree.
historic district for the fencing in Kenema.
Agree as well.
So maybe we need to have.
Especially when it comes
circle
to
back this
Kenema.
in another session or something. I don't know.
Okay,
Well, I will, I'll take a stab at, changing C and D to not, or removing C and D essentially. It sounds like removing split rail from number 3 as well as your direction, or no?
Yeah.
I'm happy removing it. I don't see any
I
need
don't
for it.
know.
Okay.
I don't
And
think.
even the goat fence, even on, in 3,
On 3E.
yeah.
Or I don't know, for Kenema, I have a hard time seeing the
The gabion
gabion wall.
I know.
or
That one just,
Okay.
Even recycled concrete really, has
They
as
can
an
make it-
imitation basalt wall maybe, I don't know,
but that's in the rear yard, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd almost, I think we're pretty much in agreement with what our comments were for the other, staff recommendations on the different topics, but the fence and wall, I think it almost deserves a little bit more, scrutiny. And I don't know if that kind of throws a monkey wrench into the,
Well, we have the schedule here.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Well, I can, I'm happy to still write up the policy, with what we've agreed on
Okay, and then kind
already, I think, and then kind of, we can talk about it at the next meeting, cause I think, the hearing to adopt the rest of these, it sounds like we're in mostly agreement for everything else, so we can
Okay,
use next meeting if you would like
the work
to
session to kind of,
continue the conversation on fences. and
Okay.
walls.
okay. I just think we need to look at it a little bit more, yeah, to kind of massage it. Cool.
And we're originally hoping to have the public hearing at our May meeting. So if we're working on it at a work session prior to that meeting, we're probably not going to have it then.
Well, I can still draft up I can still put together a draft policy to start with, and then it can be revised,
Okay,
during the hearing. I mean, this isn't it's not a quasi judicial kind of process. So I don't think we need to really worry about,
we don't
The
need the
procedure as
7-day
much.
notice
Yeah.
and everything. Okay, that works then. We're gonna break now, and we will be back at 7:15 for those of you who weren't here at the time.
Ran long.
Our work session ran long for reasons beyond our control.
okay?
Thank you. Work session is closed.
Can leave my purse here.